Hello and welcome to Uncorked. I'm Gerald Colton along with Bill Green. We talk about wine, life, and business, and we have a really special guest here today. We're not our usual locale of Saddle Hill Winery, but we're right around the corner at Temple Beth Shalom in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, where today's guest kind of grew up in this community. And we're here to talk about his new book. He is one of the legendary best authors on the planet. Why don't you introduce Mitch Albom?
Mitch, it's really a pleasure and an honor to have you here, but I got to tell you honestly, while we went to the same Hebrew school, you were a year older, and I remember you vividly walking down the hallways, but it wasn't until the early 90s when I saw you on Sports Reporter on ESPN, I said, wait, I know that guy. And we've been following your career, and it's just been amazing. You're a terrific journalist, writer, screenwriter, philanthropist, which is really, I love learning about all of your things that you're doing in Haiti and Detroit. And welcome to Uncorked.
Thanks for having me. I don't know anything about wine or business, so we're going to have to just talk about life, I
But
think.
let's talk about life,
Yeah.
because what was the inspiration on having second chances?
Well, this new book, Twice, is about a guy who has the ability to do anything in his life a second time. And the motivation for it was probably getting older. You know, as you get older, more and more people around you talk about the things that they should have done. Or that they didn't get a chance to do, but they don't do it. You know, when you're younger, you think, oh, I should get out of this career and try that. You do it. You know, I should get out of this relationship and try that. You do it. It seems to be that at a certain point in life, people just stop changing and then they just start regretting. So I wanted to write a book about, well, what if you did have the power to go back and change everything? Would it necessarily be better? And of course, as the character finds out in the book, not necessarily, you know, especially when it comes to relationships.
Love, in particular.
Yeah.
And obviously the character, Alfie, is a fictional character, but there's so many lessons in this book and all your books that apply to real life.
Yeah.
And I think that's really probably what your goals are.
Yeah, and actually a lot of the stuff that happened to Alfie in that book happened to me. You know, I think you'll find most writers, even though they write novels, you know, a lot of the incidents will come from their own life. So Alfie is not particularly skillful when he's a teenager with girls, and you know, a lot of embarrassing moments. And I didn't have to make any of those up. I just thought back to a couple of mine and threw them in there. Yeah.
Well, obviously in your own life, I don't know that I'd call them second chances, but there's been transformations and pivots and things like that. So you were I originally headed for a music career and then wound up in this thing called writing.
Yeah, I really, you know, one of the reasons I thought I could do this book is because I'm sort of a walking example of a twice life. You know, I've had a couple of different existences. That was one. You know, I started out as a musician, then ended up as a writer. But that's not all that unusual. And, you know, in your 20s, you know, you try one career and you do something else. For me, the real pivot came, you know, right about at the almost midpoint of my life. Well, let's hope not. now that I do the math, maybe the third point. But I was 37, and up to that point, I had been really a gung-ho sports writer, type A personality, 100 hours a week working. I was on ESPN 3 days a week. I lived up in Bristol, Connecticut, just to do I launched ESPN2 with Keith Olbermann and Susie Colburn. You know, do the sports reporters on Sunday morning, write 5 columns a week, do a radio show, do any television. I never said no to anybody for anything because I always thought, well, they won't ask again if you say no. And then when I was 37, I had this experience with my old college professor, Morrie Schwartz, that turned into the book Tuesdays with Morrie. And it was just supposed to be, it was just sort of a screeching of the brakes. He was dying from Lou Gehrig's disease, and I went to go visit him. Thought it would be one time. I went again, and he started going every Tuesday. And we sort of did this last class together in what's important in life when you know you're going to die. And it was very apparent to me that here was this person who I really respected and loved when I was a student, and he was dying, and nothing that I did in my life resembled what was important to him as he died. And I started to think about, well, really, if when you die, you don't talk about your work and you don't talk about your money and you don't talk about your accomplishments and you just talk about the people in your life and the love that you have in your life, I'm on a pretty bad path here, you know, and if I should suddenly die or find myself with a disease, like he did, I wouldn't have very much. I wouldn't have very much in my life to, look back on. And so Morrie kind of, between inspiring me and kind of scolding me, he did both. Um, I wrote a book about our experience together to pay his medical bills. And that was really the first time I'd ever done anything that was really for somebody else. Up to that point, almost everything I did was just for my career, my betterment. And I wrote the book just to pay his medical bills. And it was funny because nobody wanted the book. And so I really thought, well, I'm really just doing this as a labor of love, but it was good training, because I hadn't done anything as a labor of love. And I wrote it for a publisher who was the only publisher that was interested in it. And when they printed it, they printed 20,000 copies. And I thought, well, all right, I did something nice for somebody. And now I'll go back to sports writing. And what happened was, it didn't let me go back to sports writing because Tuesdays with Morrie became something that nobody could have anticipated. And it went on to sell, millions of copies, and it became the biggest memoir of all time. And what happened?
Still, right? I mean, it's still the biggest
probably,
memoir
unless another memoir comes along that sells 20-something million copies. But the funny thing was that it wasn't just a book. It was the way that people reacted to me. Like, instead of being in the airport and people coming up to me and saying, hey, who's going to win the Super Bowl? Sports guy. They didn't even know my name. They just recognized from ESPN. Sports guy, who's going to win the Super Bowl? And you'd say, Patriots, and keep going, because the answer was always Patriots.
Not Lions.
No, back then, that would have gotten a laugh. But then all of a sudden, I noticed after about a year after that Tuesdays with Morrie was out, that people would come up to me. They'd say, you're Mitch Albom, right? And I'd say, yeah. And they'd say, well, my mother died of cancer, and the last thing we did was read your book together. Can I talk to you about her? And you can't go, Patriots, and just keep going. You have to stop. You have to listen. You have to talk. And I have stopped and listened and talked, not hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of times. And you become sensitized to people's heartbreak and grief, and how many people in the world are walking around, with a broken heart, and you wouldn't even know it if you looked at them. And my world began to change, and my concerns began to change, and I became more empathetic. And so, and that's blossomed into more than you have time to hear, but a whole long life of, dedicating myself to charitable work and in Detroit and in Haiti and with kids in an orphanage. And all that kind of stemmed from that pivot that happened when I started to spend time with Morrie and do something for somebody else. So I really do live, or have lived, a twice life. And the life I live now doesn't even resemble the life I lived back then. And I think that can be true of a lot of people who feel like they can't change. That's not true. You can always change. And, the whole thing about second chances is that you don't need a magical power to have a second chance, like the character in the book. Second chance is the next minute of your life, and you apply everything you've learned up to that point. That is your second chance, and your third and your fourth and fifth and thousandth and 10,000th.
And it's such a, inspiration, because I think being somebody that has also spent a lot of time giving back, there's always a skepticism, like, why are they doing it? What's their motive? Is it for a tax deduction? What is it? But, when I look at it, and I'm sure we share the sentiments, it's an honor. It's a privilege. It's not an obligation. And what you do in Detroit and what you do in Haiti, and, when I saw your presentation about Haiti, wow. I mean, that was just mesmerizing. Where's it going now?
Haiti? Well, I've been in Haiti since 2010, so going on 16 years, and I go there every month. I operate an orphanage there. Haiti is the second poorest country in the world. It's right off of our shores. It's not in Africa where all the rest of the poorest countries are. It's not, in some faraway Asian part. It's an hour and a half from Miami. And yet you would be going back in time to go there if you look at the suffering and the starvation and the lack of education, the lack of funds, the lack of basic water or health. And our kids, we run an orphanage there in Port-au-Prince. Port-au-Prince is now 90% controlled by gangs. We're in the 10% area that isn't. But our kids have not left our orphanage grounds in 4 years. They can't even go outside. It's too dangerous to be shot or kidnapped. When I go down, I have to go and I have to take a helicopter into the city because you can't fly into Port-au-Prince anymore. They closed the airport 2 years ago. They shoot at the planes when the planes come in, so there aren't no planes. You have to take a helicopter and land in a secret location and then get in a armored car with bodyguards and drive to the orphanage, just to get to an orphanage. This is an orphanage where we now spend a huge portion of our budget on security. We have 24 armed security guards just ringing our place for an orphanage. It's preposterous. And this is what you have to do just to try to get by there. But thank God our kids are thriving. They go to school 4 hours a day in English and French on our campus. It's our, so they don't leave. It's the school's right there. And they all have their own beds, and they all get 3 healthy meals a day. And we have doctors and nurses on staff, and we have a music program and an arts program. And they end up graduating. And every one of our kids so far has earned a college scholarship here in the United States, and 2 of them are in medical school. And I don't say that in any kind of bragging way. I say it to say, you see, kids just need a chance. You give them a chance, and they'll thrive. But if you deny them food and water and education, and then they're not going to go anywhere. And so, Haiti's a real challenge. And if anyone wants to help us, they can find out more about it at havefaithhaiti.org. That's our website.
Well, Mitch, I know you're on a book tour now and you're super busy. My foundation, the Saddle Hill Foundation, would love to support, and we'll get in touch with your people to make a donation, and would love to be involved.
That's very kind.
And thank you so much for your time. And I hope before you leave, you'll sign a book for me.
But before you go, I want to talk legacy just for 1 second, okay? And that is because for me, my legacy, if my life were to end right now, is my children, and everything that they created thereafter.
Yeah.
But for you, you've left quite a legacy of your work, as well as the orphanage, as well as the homeless work you've done with S.A.Y. Detroit. What to you is legacy?
Hope. That's all I want to do after I'm gone. I've inspired some hope.
Well, you have provided.
Hope will take care of itself. If you inspire hope in other people, they'll do things that will lead to great things. I don't need anything. I don't need to accomplish any more than that. If I inspired hope in other people, then they'll take it from there.
Well, you are an inspiration. And as a person who loves the written word, I've never read anybody who uses it better than you do.
Thank you.
And the things of when people approach you and tell you how you affected them. I mean, I wonder what it feels like to you, knowing that, I've spent many hours in my bed reading and crying and laughing to your words. You've changed my life and affected my life, and you've done that to millions of people all over the world.
Thank you. Well, that means a lot to me. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Thanks for having me on your show, guys.
It's really our honor. It's a pleasure. Please read this and all the other Mitch Albom books. You will not be sorry. Twice a really special one coming up. And thank you for spending the time with us. Glad for coming back to this community that I know still is deep in your
home. This is home.
Well, thank you.
Good to see you.
All the best, Mitch. So thank you, Mitch Albom. On behalf of Bill Green, Gerald Colton, thank you all for listening to Uncorked. We'll catch you next time.